Good afternoon, viewers, and thank you for tuning in to this exclusive interview with Dr. Bharrat Jagdeo. As you all know, he's the Vice President of the Cooperative Republic of Ghana, and we do this from time to time with the intention of transparency being brought to the people, explanations being given to the citizenry to afford them the opportunity to understand what is going on with Guyana, what plans the government have for the people of this country, and that can afford you the opportunity to plan your life better through all the noise that is out there. Dr. Jagdeo, thank you for this opportunity once again.
You're welcome.
Getting straight into it, I know you've had a busy day and we have to make sure this one is a very compact one. There is, right now, the talk on the streets is the opposition, AFC's intention. As we know, next year of March, we'll be having local government elections. And the AFC has chosen not to contest in those elections. Do you see that affecting Guyanese in any way?
So you started by speaking about the noise out there, and you're so correct about that. That on almost every issue in this country, people have to have the ability to sift through a lot of comments by a ton of useless people who don't add any value to a greater understanding of the topic at hand, but seem hell-bent on just misleading or misinforming people. And it's not just on local government elections, on most every topic that you can think of. That is why I describe it as an industry. These people wake up in the morning just with the sole purpose of getting their names on social media or their faces in the newspaper or a letter there. I think it feeds their ego. But the damage that they do by misrepresenting issues, and many of them present themselves as specialists in various areas, but they don't have a clue what's going on. The damage is unbelievable because it saps you sometimes. You have to make so much effort to sift through all of this to get to the truth. And so we have heard from several people about the local government elections. First of all, we heard at the beginning that the People's Progressive Party was dealing the holding of local government elections. We had to point out that we are not the ones in charge. We don't prepare the elections. We don't determine the timing. That is done by GCOM. And GCOM is made up of 3 commissioners representing the opposition, 3 from the government, and a chair. So we had to fight through that rhetoric that we were delaying the holding of local government elections. GCOM went through the process, and then a letter was written by the chair of GCOM to give us a period in which local government could be held, starting from March 13th to sometime in April of 2023. As soon as we received that letter, we named the earliest date possible. That's a March 13th date.
First opportunity.
The first opportunity. Because we believe that local government elections are overdue, and the citizens of this country need to replenish the leadership at local government bodies, and they can only do so through local government elections. So these elections would be held. Since that news came out, we have heard from the various political parties. Now, long before that, the APNU AFC at their rally and elsewhere said they will not go to any election without a new voters list. So I saw some of them, from the public posture of the two main parties in the APNU AFC coalition. We heard from Katiyu saying they're not going to go to elections. Then we saw Norton was non-committal. He said he will not allow the PPP to control their strongholds, but didn't say whether he would go to elections or not. I predicted long before that, in spite of the rhetoric surrounding the list, that he will go to elections. And then almost immediately, today, after Katiyu said they will not go to elections, I saw a statement from AFC. No doubt Ramjatan was called into Congress Place, probably given a bottle of scotch, and he changed his mind and he said they're now non-committal on whether they will go to the elections or not. It's premature to take a definitive position that they will consult with their main partner, the PNC. Now, we know that they're still concerned about the voters list. So let's talk about the AFC. The AFC, tried this before. You recall, even in the period when they were in government, the AFC went separately to local government elections. And it proved to the entire country that they had no support. They were practically wiped out around the country. I don't think they won a single local government body in the whole of Guyana when they contested in the period when they were in office, when they contested alone. So the AFC knows that from that very small level, their support has diminished further to almost negligible levels. So I would not put it past them not to contest the elections, not because of any fear that the list is bloated, but simply to save face, because they know they'll practically be further wiped out if there is anything like that, that you could be practically eliminated from having any say at the national level, because the elections will demonstrate to people what we all know, is that their base has practically been wiped out. And so they will either not go to the elections, or they will go hiding behind the coalition. So they may have some face saving here. So I don't pay too much attention to what Katiyu's or Ramjatan, what they had to say. Secondly, Norton, as I said before, Norton believes that what he thinks could actually happen. And it happens with a lot of small-minded people when they don't operate at a senior level within their party or at the national level. Now, I'm not speaking about ordinary people. I'm speaking about people who have a bloated, oversized impression or opinion of themselves. And Norton fits that group. He fits that category, ideally. So I don't pay attention to his so-called bravado, you know, because I know that's the only way that he thinks he can create some space for himself at the national level. I know he is going to retreat from that position that he took at the rally. So they will contest the elections. APNU will contest the elections, regardless of what Norton says. They will contest the elections. Now, whether they contest or not, I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. It's great for the country if we have a robust competition, but they have to decide on that. So if they think that we're begging them to contest or not, that's the PPP will contest these elections, and we're contesting with a view to bring in greater local leadership to many of these areas. And we're hoping that we could, in some cases, displace councils controlled by APNU that really don't bring any benefit to people. Take, for example, the city council here. They have not done any work on roads, they have not done work on drainage, on outfalls, and nothing in the city, although that is their responsibility. Look at Georgetown. Any attempt to change the city to fix a road or drain, it has to be done by the central government. The project from Main Street to Vicention Road on the railway embankment, to beautify it and to go to the seawall and then into Kitty or Pontrench Dam or between the boulevard between Prashad Nagar and Campbellville. All of these projects are being done and funded by the central government. Almost all the roads are, every time the Ministry of Public Works even has to go to patching roads in the city, which is a city responsibility. They just collect revenue and they pay wages and salaries, nothing else. That's what the city council does here. And so we are hoping that people will see through that and that we can bring greater leadership at the local level. But let us go back to the reasoning behind why they say they're not contesting elections. That they're fighting for a clean list. And when APNU AFC, this is a group of people who fulfill no promise they made, who have a history of rigging elections and who tried to steal the elections in 2020 through various machinations, from illegally installing a chairman of GCOM to trying to get an illegal house-to-house registration done to disenfranchise people, then actually getting someone to declare false results, try to block the recount. This is the group of people who are talking about clean elections. They then even got the GRO and the police to falsify records to show people who were in the country. They said they were out of the country. We demonstrated that in the 5 months period, and now there is an investigation ongoing to identify the perpetrators in the GRO and the police force who collaborated with APNU to do that, to cast doubts on the recount and the probity of the voting system. They've done that openly. Imagine the reincarnation of the APNU AFC now into God-fearing people who are democracy-loving individuals. You can't mention Norton's name or Cathy Hughes or Ramjatan in the same breath that you mention democracy. Anyone who does that should be placed in a madhouse. madhouse. So these are the people now talking about a clean voters list. So the reason they lost somehow in 2020 is because of the list was bloated. That's their new excuse. Now we have demonstrated, there's a Demerara wave story today to show how many people in 2015 were on the list and how many voted. You had 500,000 on the voters list, over 560,000, and about 400 and something thousand voted, 412,000, 416,000. So not everyone who was on the list voted, because you had a robust system in the polling places where all the parties had polling agents who signed on to the statements of vote. And the same thing happened in 2020. From 660 per thousand voters, about 460 voted. 200,000 people did not vote. But now suddenly, the list caused them to lose the elections. So let us come to the list. We've made it clear that there is a method for cleaning dead people from the list, and the PPP supports that. The new Representation of People Act that we're passing, we're saying that GCOM must get all of those names on the GRO who have died. They must then publish the names and send a list of all of the names to the political parties in the country. And then after there's no objection, remove all those names. So all the people who are dead can be removed from the list. That's great. There's a way to do that, and GCOM is empowered to do that. Now that leaves the people who have migrated. And we've pointed out clearly that that matter was tested in court. It was tested in court. And it follows, you cannot remove their names because the Constitution of Guyana says two things when it was changed. In the period prior to 2001, the constitutional change, there are three criteria for voting, registering and voting. Guyanese, 1, 18 years and over, 2, and resident in Guyana, 3. In the constitutional change that we all agreed to, we removed the residency criteria from the people's right to register and vote. So it meant all you have to do now to be on the list or to vote, to be on the list is to be Guyanese and 18 years and over. So once you get on the list, a person cannot remove your name because you're not resident here. Because you can come back and vote. You can't vote from abroad, but you can come back and vote. Because no longer is residency a requirement to be on the list. You can come back and vote. So that is conflicting with the Constitution. So they tried illegally, knowing that they tried to still violate the Constitution. We went to the court and the court ruled against it. So nobody can change those names now. And that's what they call the bloat. The people who are registered here, legally registered. So now they suddenly want constitutional change to remove those people, disenfranchise them basically. So if you're Guyanese, for example, if you're not home, you go for a 3 months vacation abroad. And you, whilst you're abroad, they do the new house to house. So your name can be, you're not on the list, you don't get a chance to register. You can't vote. You can't vote in the future.
So when you come back, you'll be disenfranchised.
Disenfranchised. So all that. So now they want, first they were saying, oh, we must remove it, and they're trying to get the international bodies to say that. When we show the Constitution and the ruling, the court ruling, which says it's illegal to do so, Now they're quietly changing their tune, But all along they wanted us to break the law. So the second thing now they're saying, oh, biometrics. Biometrics must be used to vote. So that means if you don't have the proof, like the biometrics, when you go into a polling place, like if they don't have a retinal scan or your ID there, or your fingerprint, you can't vote. But there's no such requirement in the Constitution again. And that was tested in the Esther Pereira matter. When we agreed together with APNU, sat down together, we then jointly went to the Parliament with a law to say you can only vote without an ID card. And what happened? The APNU lost the elections, PNC lost the elections, and then they challenged the ID card use as being unconstitutional. They said we unconstitutionally used the ID card. And it went to Claudette Singh, Justice Claudette Singh. And she ruled against the PPP and reduced our term to 3 years. We had to hold elections back within 3 years because ID card was used to vote. So that's what they want us to get back to. So a situation like that, where you constrain people's constitutional right to vote using biometrics, and then what happens is that they can then go to the court again and get the elections overturned. So we're not falling into that trap. And if you want constitutional changes, we got to talk a lot about that, but we're not in constitutional change to disenfranchise people. And any constitutional change has to be to enfranchise. And they're not to fit into a fallacy, a fiction, a product of a very active imagination that APNU lose the elections because of any list. APNU has lost elections in Guyana because they have no track record of achievement. 28 years in office, and after that, half of our people had fled the country. We're the poorest country next to Haiti in the hemisphere. We didn't have food to eat, nothing. That is why people don't vote for them. And then in the 5 years, they return to a high taxation mode and paid no attention to people. That is why they can't win elections, not bloated list. So every time they're building this, they're trying to clean the list. You're not cleaning any list. Because people never voted falsely at 2015 or 2020 election. You lost on the basis of this. So it is face saving. They need something to say why they're losing elections. And they will never look inwards to say we have a useless leader now and we can't win with this useless leader, Norton. They don't even have a plan, a vision for the future. You look through the 5 years. They took 5 years to develop a document called the Green State Strategy. Spent millions of dollars that we left from the LCDS to do that. Didn't earn a cent from this trading of forest carbon in that period. That's what, we're reversing all of that now. Patterson talks about energy plan. What energy plan he had? They couldn't even decide on the site for the gas to shore project from 2016 to 2020. GPL was falling apart. They made no major new investments in GPL. Not a single major new investment in GPL. After the no confidence, after the elections were won, they then bought a power plant that we ended up having to pay for. After the elections. Patterson is one of the biggest hustlers that we ever know. Now I see him talking about energy plan and all of that. The same Patterson is charged on 2 matters. We have a bridge that we went to public tender for and awarded. Patterson got charged for the feasibility study for the bridge. Not even the bridge. the feasibility study because he illegally got cabinet bypassing the tender board to issue an award when cabinet should only issue no objection according to the laws. And then they took a large sum of money from the harbor bridge itself that can't be accounted for. That's one matter. Patterson is the same man who they bought some scales from one of their consultants in Jamaica, you know, who helped them, elections consultant. Some scales, spent millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. The scale never got delivered. Patterson is facing the court on that too. So they're reinventing all of these things. So no planning. That is why they lost the elections. So they can come and talk as much as they wish to talk. But we know precisely what. So coming back to the local government issue, there is nothing, absolutely nothing. Their whole mantra about a clean list has nothing to do with clean list, a clean voters list, because people did not cheat at the election time. We had a robust system. They lost because they're inept, useless, incompetent, corrupt. That is why they lost the elections.
Dr. Jagdeo, a lot on the opposition's antics of not voting into the elections. The reality is, all is not well at GCOM. In the 2020, after the 2020 elections, after everybody, the international community, observers, all political parties agreed that the elections were fair, they were transparent, and it was a success. After that, you had individuals like Mingu trying to manipulate numbers. This is the returning officer for the largest region of voters, Region 4. You had the CEO of GCOM acting in a manner that could only be added up to criminal. You had the Guyana Police Force trying to get rid of diplomats. These things happened publicly. You had a lot going on at GCOM. What is the government doing, and what reassurances people have that this would not happen again, since these are three, Ms. Myers, three of the main people down at GCOM? How do we know, and what reassurances people can have that these elections are not going to be tampered with if they're contested by the opposition?
Yes, so first of all, the election procedures basically are pretty robust and documented. But the people there were the vulnerability, and APNU compromised them. So my position is APNU tries to distance itself from some of these individuals. But we pointed out that Mr. Lowenfield got 200 acres from the government in Linden, prime land, where they couldn't find land to do that you could do 1,000 house lots on. They couldn't even find land to build house lots for ordinary people. They still have to explain how Valda Lawrence's signature was on the statement of the declaration, the regional declaration for Region 4, when no political party is authorized to sign there. Only the RO has to sign. But her signature found its way onto that declaration. Still have not. So APNU was in the center of this all, the attempt to rig the elections by compromising individuals there. So thankfully, the system was robust, that we had an external court now, where the PPP joined that. When I was president, we joined the CCJ. And had it not been for the CCJ, some of the notoriously flawed decisions by some of our courts in this country would have caused the democracy to suffer here. We would have become a pariah state. But thankfully, we have an external review now by a robust court. And do not underestimate the importance of that, because that was the reason why Burnham withdrew from the Privy Council in the 70s and established a final court in Ghana, because he was worried that at that time the opposition would have sought external recourse for rigged elections and they would have ruled against him. So the final court in Guyana gave decisions that became very politicized and gave decisions favorable at that time to the executive. So much so that the PNC flag used to fly over the courts rather than the national flag. That is what we came from, a history of PNC rigging. So thankfully, that is one important new development in the polity of the country. Secondly, we have now, we've looked at where Lowenfield, through capricious behavior and sole interpretation of the Representation of the People Act, allowed himself a ton of leeway to facilitate the rigging. So, right from the point where they were establishing polling places. So just imagine had he succeeded, which got changed the night before elections. They wanted to move the people who were voting in Fowles on the East Coast to go to the next village in Paradise to put the polling places in Paradise. So they had to, nearly over 1,000 voters had to go across the Paradise to vote. Just imagine if that happened, what the turnout would have been. Because in previous elections, we've had violence at Paradise. I remember one time when Gillian Burton was there and a car was burnt there with Gillian Burton. So that image is still fresh in the minds of many of the people who live in the neighboring area. We managed to get that fixed the night before the elections. So in the new law, the Representation of People's Act, we're fixing all of those things. That was one problem.
This will be before the next election.
Yes, so that's one problem. Two, the question of tabulation of votes. So you recall how Mingo did it. He was controlling it himself, didn't want to post it. Now that has to be fixed. So in the new law that is going to Parliament to be passed within a matter of a month or two, the polling places have to be identified long before and notified to the political parties. So you don't have that situation. We're saying for every number of polling for individuals, like 500 individuals, there must be a polling place. And it must be within a proximity, close to where they live. So you then don't have a repeat of this situation. Accessibility to the voters. You don't have like what they did in some polling places. Put 2,000-3,000 people, so long lines in one polling place. So it confuses people.
Attempts to create frustration.
Frustration, and people will walk
at a time when people are very tense, by the way.
Tense. That will be fixed by law. Secondly, before you start tabulating any votes at the regional level, all the statements of poll would be uploaded, has to be uploaded by GCOM. So if you have a good calculator, the night before, when those are uploaded, and the election night and the next morning, before 7 o'clock in the morning, if everything is uploaded the same night, you should be, every citizen of this country should be able to know who won the election, long before the tabulation is done there. Every
Something here happens in the States.
News agencies don't already know that. So that will be fixed. A number of other things fixed, and serious penalties for breaches. Serious penalties for breaches. So the law is now before us. APNU doesn't want that passed. Today they issued a statement saying they're opposed to any changes in the ROPA. They don't want that change. So this making elections more transparent and holding public officials more accountable and closing all the loopholes for capricious action. A simple thing like a manual for training. The last time, the manual for conduct of elections, we couldn't get a copy before the elections. So if you don't have a manual, you don't know what the rights of the presiding officers are on the citizens. So for example, we are now saying in the new Representation of People Act that this manual must be developed and made available to all the political parties and published in the newspapers long before the elections. So you will know that if you go into a polling place, first of all, that what a presiding officer's powers are. That they can't send you away capriciously. They can't deny you the right to vote capriciously or based on whims and fancies and stuff like that. The manual would help all of that. So people will be trained. The polling agents to the party will know what they're allowed to do. So they're allowed now to be in a position where they can see the folio. So when you come in, if you're a critic, you're a bit recognizable because of your hair, but many people are not so recognizable. So they would be able to see the folio, that the picture ID that they have on the folio, and not be placed with 2 miles away where the presiding officer is sitting somewhere else. We're calling for random placement of presiding officers, because Lowenfield will handpick some people or somebody of his nature and say, you go and sit in these these areas, because
the presiding officers trained in a certain way and can go anywhere.
Anywhere. So you have random placement. So you don't know who's going where. So if APNU says, oh, in Dolphin Primary, we're going to plan something there, they don't know which presiding officer they're going to encounter there. So all of these things are being placed in law now. So we don't have to depend so much on the individuals in Jacob, because we're fixing the system.
And guys ever see Mingo, Myers, and
they're before the court
playing a role again in elections?
Well, not if, I hope not. I hope not. I hope not. And not if the PP has anything to do with it, they will never have a role again. But they're before the courts now, and we have now a commission. They were calling for a commission of inquiry. APNU was until they actually got it, and now they don't want it. You know, about 2 months ago, they were saying we should inquire into what happened. Because we had gone a little quiet on it, we had moved on nationally because we were busy. And APNU was out there bouncing everybody, Ramjatan and the others, we want a commission of inquiry. They got one now. Let's see who's going to show up and give evidence. Norton has his statements of poll. You recall, he said he has his statements of poll, and he has seen them and he asked them. Well, he could take his statements of poll that showed APNU winning the elections to the commission of inquiry. He could take that there. He could go and talk about the bloated list and show how the bloated list led to them losing the elections. He could go to the commission of inquiry and show that. Yes, to demonstrate now that 2,300 of their polling agents who were in every polling place, who signed the statements of poll, all were bribed by the PPP because they signed on to the statements of poll saying that, because that at one stage they were saying that. So it is, I'm hoping they would participate. They got what they wanted, a commission of inquiry, and that is starting work, I guess, in a couple of days' time. So there's been a lot of attempt to strengthen the system. Now, local government elections are held slightly differently because you have individuals who can contest, large numbers of individuals in the constituency. It's both constituency based and PR. So it's a combination of the two. So you have a large number of candidates and stuff like that. And local government elections, you've had lower turnout historically. So it doesn't generate the same sort of heat as the national elections. They're nevertheless very important. Very important. So we are all for strengthening any system that would deliver better elections in the future. But this nation is not, we're not going to buy into this fiction that APNU ever lost a single election because of a bloated list. Never happened.
Dr. Jagdeo, is the PPP Civic going to use this option? I'm not going to say the government. Is the PPP Civic going to use this opportunity of local government election in light of the fact when you go across this country on your outreaches, the complaints you get constantly show that local organs are failing? Would the PPP use this, since you have the ability to put up candidates and so on, to rid itself of individuals who have been failing at the lower level?
Yes, so there is quite a bit of that. So there are lots of individuals who are either not performing their job, so they don't show up to meetings. Many of the councils are not functioning the way they should because of that, basically the negligence. There's some who have actively mismanaged the affairs of the councils. There's some people who are corrupt, and there's some who have done a great job. So you have different categories of people. And in most cases, the citizens are right about the lack of services that they receive from these councils. But in some cases, and in quite a few cases, people's expectations of these councils are too high. When you look at the resource base of the council, so a council, say for example 5274 NDC, 25 villages might collect $20 million a year in taxes, local rates and taxes. Approximately 1 million, say a million per village. Now, to clean the drains, to pay wage staff, then clean the drains in the village. One drain might be more than $1 million if it's a big drain. And they have to do a number of things like collect garbage and do a whole range of stuff. So the government gives a subvention. It's not a very high sum, there maybe 5 million or so. So they simply don't have a resource base to tackle all of the issues. So in the city too, that's why we do a lot of the roads and stuff like that. A city has a bigger resource base, like all these companies, and they pay high level of taxes and stuff. So sometimes people get criticized for not doing things that they don't have the money to do, the councils. And so sometimes we have to be understanding of the people there too. Some get a bad name rightfully, and some get a bad name because of the frustration of the citizens. You know, I want my canal clean. Nobody ain't cleaning it. And I talk to the council, but they don't have the money to do it. So clearly, selection of people is important to contest. We laid out 14 criteria for how you should pick the individuals. But inevitably it happens, people sometimes show their best side when they're being selected as candidates. The moment they get the job as councillors, it's a different matter. The same people who would say, for example, with the last local government elections, we urged the councillors once every quarter to post the financial status of the NDC somewhere prominently. So we say to them, if you only collected in that quarter $4 million or $2 million, so people can't come then and ask you to spend $6 million if you only collected 2. Because they see it, they would see your financial position, post it on. And we said to them, once a quarter, at least 2, the councils have to meet people, go to the different constituencies and meet. So that was something that we gave as direction to all those councils that we want. In some cases, people did it, in others, no. So this is something that we constantly have to push and get people to work on. And although we contest as a political party, but remember there are a number of individuals there. So it's not really, the party doesn't do it. You can't exercise the same sort of control as you would maybe in a more rigid, centralized kind of setting, because this is a decentralized form of local leadership, and you want that to grow in a decentralized way. So it does have challenges. That is why we put in our manifesto that we may have to now explore a reform of the local government system. Because historically, in the olden days before Burnham centralized, just into NDCs and the new structure, the 10 regions in the new constitution, you had a lot of what are termed village offices. So they tend to have a more hands-on view of the areas. And so we may have to look at devolving more responsibilities to local organs. Like, say, maintenance of CDAM, they used to have a ranger doing that. So, you know, we don't find out when a guy is cutting down all the trees on the earthen CDAM or fetching away all the shells, the seashell here, because when it already happened. Because if you're managing it from the NBC and you have a local ranger, they go out often, they see that. So maybe in the future we might have to devolve some more of those responsibilities back into the NBCs, and then provide them with more central government transfers, financial transfer, so bigger budgets. But doing that also has its challenges, because you have to build a capacity to manage money and also to be accountable at that level. So in now 80 local government bodies, you have to strengthen capacity to manage and to handle larger sums of money and to be accountable. So eventually, but I believe that model is the one that will serve us best in the future. And you build a whole range of local leaders who can then grow into the regional and national leaders. We need more leadership skills at these local levels, who are more attuned to people's welfare and concern and can then manage these places in the way that we want them to be managed.
Dr. Jagdeo, and many citizens, even a lot in the opposition camp, reach out to me and explain their frustration with the opposition because of the fact that so much is being done by the government. Lots of money is being used, lots of projects are going on, and they expect from the opposition a robust dissection of what is going on and understanding in holding the government accountable. Yet you have the opposition leader worrying about the president's dance moves, artists from Jamaica attacking artists. Can you shed some light as to the PPP's understanding, if the PPP is seeing the opposition and its failures, and if things are being put in place to hold itself accountable, since the PPP seems to have presently free rein, no robust interaction from the opposition?
It's not like the PPP has free rein, because you do have an interaction from the opposition, and it's all negative. It's all negative. You can have an opposition that is more nuanced, that balances the negatives and the holding the government account on corruption and transparency issues, but at the same time presenting themselves as though in a manner that makes them attractive for the future, that they have clear plans and they're committed to those plans. It's not just lip service, to bringing people together as a country, and also they have clear plans to change their lives. The PNC and AFC, they have a big credibility gap in any of those matters. They were in government, and they claimed to people in 2015 they had all the plans to transform Ghana. They were in government, they had no plan whatsoever. They did not develop plans for the future. And then the projects that they implemented and the promises they made, first of all, they failed to deliver on any of the promises. In fact, they went contrary to lots of the promises that they made. They promised a better life for everybody, public service, joint services. They took away their bonus. They took away the 10,000 grant from the children. They took away the water from the pensioners. They promised the rice farmers $10,000 a bag for paddy. Instead, they put tax on their machinery and equipment, pesticides, fertilizer. They told the sugar workers they're not going to close their estates. 7,000 of them lost their job. Told them they will get $20,000, 20% increase. They got zero for all 5 years. The miners were told they'll get a better regime. They got a higher taxation, or that's on the final tax, and then they had to pay more on the VAT on machinery and equipment. Every sector, VAT on, or data and everything else. So that's your track record. You have no credibility in fulfilling promises. In fact, you went contrary to promises. Promised lower taxes, higher taxes. Promised more employment. 30,000 people lost their job before COVID. You got to deliver. So whatever they say today, they promise you the world, and they will do that. Norton wants to remove all taxes in the future again. Norton wants to create tons of employment in the future. Who would believe that? It is only a person who is mentally challenged would believe a single utterance coming from the about their plans and their credibility. First of all, Norton has no capability to deliver on any of those plans. Have you heard him on any sector? He has no technical knowledge of any sector. He talks on the oil and gas sector, it's like a child. you know, that you're preparing for a press conference, just for some bites. It has no in-depth analysis of the very complex sector. He focuses on some bites. So that is a huge problem for them. And so they can't be, even if they try to be credible now, they can't be credible because of this track record. So they turn to the only thing that they know, which is racism. And it served them well in the past, and they're hoping once again that alone, not their ability to manage this country, not their technical knowledge of how the country will change or how to manage various sectors, not their vision, but that racism would once again miraculously swing people or influence people enough to give them back power in this country. And if they can't do that, they have to be disruptive, negative on everything. So that is what we have, that type of opposition. Disruptive, negative, griping opposition. Not that we don't have an opposition. We do have, and they get paid handsomely in Parliament for it. Norton collects the leader of the opposition money. I never collected it because I lived on my pension. He collects it. He has all the perks of the office. They get that. They get paid for this. So this is what we get from Norton. And that is why I think, because he has this outsized ego, he feels frustrated. So he descends into petty-mindedness, small-mindedness. And so he then comments on the president dancing, as you said, how the president dances, or the Jamaican artists that are coming to Guyana and how they're not of an international standard, and basically that they're a negative influence because of the music. Now, we have different sorts of people in this country. People who listen to those artists too. People who, some of those artists have a Grammy nomination. They have 5 million followers on their Twitter feed. For a person like Norton to say their music is negative to young people, just consider this. If you say music, even if the lyric is not to your liking, could negatively affect people, young people. If he had a conscience, he would then tell us how the attempt to steal an election would affect young people. Does it make them all thieves? Because if the music can make all of our people bad, then your attempt to steal the election should influence young people too. Make them all bad and make them all want to steal things. And that's what their influence has been on young people. Always racism, attempt to steal elections. When have the influence ever been positive? When has this influence ever been positive? When have they said to young people, oh, the government has a scholarship program. We don't support the government, but make full use of the scholarship program. They try to deny young Afro-Guyanese a right to a scholarship, although they themselves took scholarships. So this is the PNC that you have, Norton. And somebody said to me that this thing, I know the Raj treatment that God did, that jump on Raj. Spice, yes. That maybe she should jump on his head and knock some senses into Norton's head too, because he is stupid, utterly stupid, what he said. But they brought singers too. For example, they brought performers. They spent $50 million through a corrupt transaction to bring an artiste here. $50 million. From what I gather, this was a private venture with the government working, and the government did not pay for these singers, but we support the development of all of the people, the whole concept of the cricket carnival. We supported it aggressively, but the government didn't pay here. They paid $50 million. And guess what they did? They siphoned some of the money off, and then Amnali, remember, took some of the tickets and was sharing it out to people on our own. But the tickets that they took, they then didn't share all of the tickets out. They then sold the tickets and collected money for themselves. That's what they did. It was a corrupt transaction when they brought in some of their artists. I don't know where Norton was at that time. He was still in Bamba, Mali, probably. I don't know if he got a few of the tickets and he sold them in there himself. But it's duplicity, it's nonsense. For a leader of the opposition to descend to that level, you know, and talk and criticize the artists, and the people have a following here. You're saying we shouldn't cater for that group of Guyanese too, you know, and you have greater things to pay attention to.
Dr. Jagdeo, one of the worries since the President and yourself and Cabinet have been forging foreign ministers, only today Minister Rodriguez was on the road in some Afro-Guyanese communities. And in light of the way that you guys have been proactive and reactive with the Guyanese people, you see the numbers growing of persons even crossing party lines. People are coming over in their numbers, predominantly communities that would have supported the PNC are now looking at the PPP as an option. You could see the numbers that are garnered in these outreaches, how people interact with the President, yourself, and the ministers, and you see the opposition leader sometimes walking lonely. Do you think, or is the PPP considering, due to past experiences, the understanding, if there's a level of frustration in the opposition leader turn to not only racism, but a past the PNC's affiliated itself with criminal gangs and these kind of things, and have really caused disruption to this country? Is the PPP ready for something like that in the event and likelihood of how Norton is losing really ground here?
Now, first of all, as politicians and as basically General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party, I do not underestimate any political party. So I don't want to say because he is lonely, and he is lonely. Many people many times don't want to be associated with him. They have major internal problems in APNU. A manifestation of one of those problems, or one of the numerous problems, yes, it was the recent disclosure by one of their MPs that there was an attempt to rig the elections in Georgetown at one of their groups, and that the process was not transparent. We believe that this is one of the ways that Norton got elected. So many people within the PNC not satisfied with his leadership. I pointed out that less than half of the people, the delegates, voted for his candidature to be the General Secretary or the leader of the PNC. So they have a lot of issues there, but we must not underestimate anyone, the political party or the nature of the political party. if we work hard in the People's Progressive Party, or we're elected on a set of promises we made to people, which are in our manifesto. And we must demonstrate to people once again, as we've done with every manifesto that we have presented to the population at election time, that we will stick with our promise. We have to fulfill that promise, and that promise, if you look at it in a macro way, is to improve people's lives, to give them a better income, to find jobs for them, more jobs, better public service, whether it's healthcare or education, and a promise to bring people together, all the people of our country. That's our promise, and we're working every day at that. If we work hard enough and people see that we're committed and that we want to change the whole of the country, the political dividend will come by itself. That happens. But you have to put in the work, and we're committed to doing that. So when we go to these communities, we're doing so because we made a promise to people. And so Norton has a personal problem, and then the party has a major political problem. The PNC and the FC, they just came out of power and they were inept and mismanaged the country. His personal problem is people don't want to be associated with him. So he gets very petty-minded again when the president went to Linden. Now he walked in Linden and nobody, even the dogs, move away from him when he was walking down some of the streets. So he then said, oh, the president went to Linden and the president was walking with a fugitive from justice and a man who killed his brother in Holland. So when I saw that, I said the police needs to visit this man. And I hope that the Commissioner of Police is listening. Because if the leader of the opposition, no less than the leader of the opposition, a constitutional position, a man who is paid from the public coffers, is saying he knows of a fugitive from justice, and another man who has killed his brother in Holland, walking freely here in Ghana, should give a statement to the police. So the police needs to do their job and go to the leader of the opposition. We don't want that to happen at all. But I suspect it's nonsense he's talking. It's just he's bitter that a lot of people came out to see the president when he was in Linden and he couldn't get anyone come out.
And he's not only the leader of the opposition, he's a Lindener.
Yes, he's a Lindener. Yeah. So that is why, that's the kind of petty-mindedness that he gets down to. But the people need to go and make him, the police need to pay him a visit and ask him to give a statement. Since he knows this and he is so interested in public safety, the man who killed his brother in Holland could kill me too, or walk down the street and kill somebody else. He needs to tell us who the person is and give a statement so we can charge this man and extradite him to Holland.
Dr. Jagdeo, I know it's been a lengthy day for you, and every opportunity for transparency is much appreciated. As always, in closing, the message to Guyanese people, what they can expect from the government, just a reassurance, and as we do every time.
Yeah, today was more political. I didn't want to deal with all of the government issues. We're working on quite a few things. Maybe at my press conference I'll be with those, or the next engagement we have. I just want to, in closing, I just want to, because you were there the night I went to the Glenn Lal show, the famous Glenn Lal show, and he's been cussing me since I went to his show, doing clips out of context, etc. But there's one thing that he promised. He promised to get us a power purchase agreement, because he knows everything about power and gas. He's a specialist on everything under the sun. He can build hospitals at a quarter of the price that we're building at. He's a specialist on everything. But he promised to get us a proposal to buy power at 5 cents per kilowatt hour. He said they can generate at 3. I even said to him, we'll buy it at 5 cents per kilowatt hour, including the fuel, in 3 weeks. He said he'll get it in 3 weeks. Now, a month has passed. I'm no nearer to getting a proposal from him, because he was saying it's lucrative, everybody will do this. And he promised if he couldn't get it, that he'll publish a front page apology to me and to put that he doesn't know anything about the power sector on that thing. Confess that he is talking nonsense. So I'm still waiting for either the front page confession, an apology, or the power purchase agreement at 5 cents per kilowatt hour. So if you have any way of contacting him.
Well, I must say that I have contacted Mr. Lal, and I got no less than a good question.
So well then, what people have to know, this man is engaged in a con game. He's conning people. He's either doing it for readership, viewership. He wants to con somebody in the oil and gas industry because he's not serious. If you're serious and you have conviction and you say that, then you should present it itself. And there, somebody said to me he wants to form a party with another person of questionable character, some Danny Ramnarayan. I saw they put out something about people should give them money now, you know, GoFundMe account. But they're fooling people all the time. It's a high value scam he's running with all of this. With this, you make a definitive statement. I know. How can you tell people that you're generating at 4 cents per kilowatt hour, right? 4 to 5 cents. We can get it for 3 cents per kilowatt hour because that's what it costs. And you can't deliver at 5 cents, and I suspect they can't deliver at 10 cents per kilowatt hour. But the gas to energy project that he wants a feasibility study for, we must not touch, can generate at 4 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour. That's inclusive of all the capital costs. And he makes such a very definitive, bold statement. He made a lot of other statements that showed also that he's clearly not familiar with anything in the industry. He said people are moving away from using gas as a fuel. The whole world is moving away. The entire world has now agreed that gas is the transitional fuel to 2050 and net zero scenario. The entire world. So he had a view that is contrary to that of every country in the entire world. He was like APNU on this matter, on the rigging issue. Every country in the world believed they tried to rig the election except APNU. He said that there. He thought Exxon, the company, the company had $55 billion in assets. Remember, $55 million in assets, US dollars. When it is $6 billion US dollars. The difference between 55 million and 6 billion in assets. If you don't know that, how can you be writing every day about the sector in your newspapers and say they wouldn't have enough money to cover in case there is a spill? The assets can't cover it. So these are some of the things that we need to deal with. Every single day is some new story murky in the water by people who have never done anything or can't deliver on a project of this nature.
Dr. Jagdeo, on that note, I want to thank you for this opportunity of transparency and openness and giving point of views of the government. And to you, the viewers, I want to thank you for tuning in and expecting this again sometime soon.
Sure.
Thanks again.
Okay then.